All right, here we are with part 2 of this particular Circus Magazine. This one was the June 30th of 1984. The consensus in the comments last time was that people seem to think that this is Chrissie Hynde down here. So, because we went through and could identify everybody here, but that was the one that when I was looking at that, I thought, I don't know who that is. Anyway, that seemed to be the consensus with everybody. So we ended up with this centerfold here of David Lee Roth looking cool. And then let's, and by the way, just remember, we're filming this in 4K. And if you're watching this on YouTube, that little gear icon down at the bottom, you can set your YouTube settings to 4K so you can see this in as much detail as possible. Okay, so moving on here. All right, so here we have Judas Priest, Rob Halford. Look at all those spikes. Man, I mean, what is that, like a skull right there on his belt? And oh my gosh, the leather and the spikes. Did you start seeing kids at your school that would have this stuff? It started off with people coming in and wearing these things would go over your forearm, I remember. And I don't know, part of it was seeing it on Rob Halford, but I think the first time that I ever really saw that and thought how cool it looked was, I think it was the video for Run to the Hills by Iron Maiden. Man, you know, the way he would stand there and he had those things on his arms and that he just looked so cool. But anyway, that's what I remember. That's the first time I really remember seeing that. And then you start looking at Rob Halford and all the stuff that he would wear. And then, of course, all the guys in Judas Priest. So here's Glenn. And this is in the Defenders of the Faith time period, if this was in 1984. This is an interesting picture. So that's obviously Ozzy wearing some sort of a tuxedo. And I don't know what is going on here because he's got his head shaved. I remember that time when he cut all his hair off. I remember we saw him at the US Festival and he had that really short hair and it just was so odd because he'd always had that really long hair. But look at this. He's got like some sort of makeup like drawn on his head or all around his eyes or something there. I don't know what this is all about. Anyway, that's kind of, let's see if it says anything down here. It says Ozzy seen hamming it up with his Rolls Royce, with a Rolls Royce and Bob Daisley. So yeah, anyway, there's Bob Daisley right there with Ozzy. Anyway, that's a really, really odd photo, and I'm not sure what to make of it. If anybody knows the background, why this picture exists with the makeup and stuff, was this part of a video or a movie or something? I don't know. That's really interesting. This was also around the Bark at the Moon time period, by the way, just to put it in perspective. And then I guess that's just throw an Ozzy picture in the middle of the magazine. All right, here's the Scorpions. We have Rudolf Schenker, of course, Klaus Meine. Around this time, he always had this weird looking, every time you'd see pictures of him, he had this top that zipped up. And he had it kind of unzipped. And look at this little kind of thing that comes over his shoulders. Anyway, I just remember it looks filthy too. Because he was probably wearing it every single day in concert. Because every picture you see of him in this period, it seems like he's wearing that. So very interesting. Okay, so here we have, that's obviously Jack Blades. So it says Jack Blades and Night Ranger appeared with Rat, Quiet Riot, and Triumph at a metal festival in Michigan. Did anybody remember that? Anybody go to that thing? Jack Blades, okay, that's kind of interesting. So Summer Rock, 1984, A to Z. So I guess this is going to list all the different bands, and so Flock of Seagulls, Accept, Bryan Adams, yeah, Aerosmith, Alien Sex Fiend, Adamant, I forgot even that name even existed. Beach Boys, Berlin, Bon Jovi, Boomtown Rats, Bullet, John Butcher Axis. Oh my gosh, look at all this stuff. Okay. So let's see if this is Summer Rock. Judas Priest embark on the Defending the Faith World Tour. I tell you, some of these pictures, the Circus Magazine, the pictures in here it was just kind of like, I'm sure Jack Blades would be like, yeah, you use that shot. That's a good one. I mean, it's kind of funny. Some of these pictures that they would put in here were just so bad. But it is, it was a different world too, where you had film and you didn't know what you had until you got back to the lab. So the Jacksons, Michael Jackson's brothers, are hoping to perform at the Statue of Liberty on the 4th of July. Well, that's interesting. So, okay, Ozzy's run through the gauntlet. Of course, this is, if he was touring here, it would have been on the Bark at the Moon. That's the time period we were in. Scorpions were in Love at First Sting at this point. The Jackson Victory Tour. Oh my gosh. Do you remember when that happened? Because, of course, Michael Jackson had put out Thriller, which was the biggest thing ever, biggest selling album of all time. And then the Jacksons, or the Jackson 5, or whatever they were calling themselves, I guess it just says the Jacksons, they put out, there it is right there, premiering the music from their new LP Victory. I remember when they came on tour, but I don't think anybody cared about the Jacksons at that point. It was all Michael. I mean, he really was the reason that I think anybody went to see them. I think the Jacksons as a unit probably were, I think a lot of people probably didn't even think they existed still as a unit because Michael had just taken over the world in such a way. But anyway, they put out that album. And the reason I remember that album, it was the State of Shock, because they had Mick Jagger. Mick Jagger came in and sang that song. Anyway, that was kind of a hit song, and that was the Jacksons. And anyway, I didn't mean to get off on that, but I remember when that happened because they came through Denver and they played at a stadium. I remember that. That was like such a big deal. Okay, Crocus, 1984. I think they were still on Headhunter at this point, because I think the next one after that, I'm not a big Crocus guy, but I think the next one, but I do have some of their stuff. I think the next one was The Blitz, but I think they were still on Headhunter at this point. So then you have Rush, obviously, right here. Full-on 80s look at this point. And they were on Grace Under Pressure. And Grace Under Pressure was such a... I loved the song Distant Early Warning, if you remember that song. But the world waits on my shoulder, but what am I to do? Such a cool tune. And then they had that other song, I think it was called Red Sector A, that had some kind of cool stuff in the middle. I never loved that album. I have it in the collection, but it definitely wasn't my top favorite Rush album. But again, Distant Early Warning was really cool. But the one thing about Distant Early Warning is, especially at the beginning of the song, it really has a police flavor. When you just go listen to it, and when you listen to the beginning of it, you can almost imagine Sting starting to sing. You know, set aside Geddy's melody line and just listen to the music, and you could almost anticipate Sting's voice kind of popping in there, which is interesting when you put that in perspective, because when they were recording Grace Under Pressure, at that point, the Police was one of the biggest bands in the world, because Synchronicity had just come out in '83. So when they started working on Grace Under Pressure, the Police was like the biggest thing in the world. And so, you know, I don't know, who knows what influences what, but, you know, the Police had that really strong kind of reggae sound. Hang on just a second, this will be really quick. With hundreds of videos on our channel now, we've made playlists to make it easy for you to find whatever the thing is that you're interested in. We have a playlist with all of our Rush videos, Kiss, Led Zeppelin, Van Halen. We have categories like 80s metal and even our popular magazine flip-throughs, where we go through page by page with Circus Magazine, Hit Parader, and others, all in 4K resolution. You'll find it all organized and ready to explore. Just click the playlist tab on our channel's homepage. All right, back to the video. And their very first song on that album had a real, if they weren't influenced by the Police, you know, they sure did have that sound kind of in there, at least in that first song. So there's Crocus, Mark Storace. I don't know the names of these other guys at all, but yeah, he was so interesting just because he had that, he just sounded almost exactly like Bon Scott, and kind of became notorious for that. So they had some cool stuff though, especially the album Headhunter just the song Headhunter was cool. So, okay, here we go. Rush, Gone But Not Forgotten. Let's see here. Rush had not released a new piece of vinyl now since 1982, but judging from the way their new LP, Grace Under Pressure, has exploded onto the charts, it's apparent that Alex, Geddy, Neal were merely gone for a while and not forgotten. And that, in some ways, that actually became kind of Rush's legacy, wasn't it? That even when they would go through periods where people who'd loved them at different eras of their career, I mean, this is me, for example. I think I've talked about this on this channel before. I remember a couple times Rush coming through, and they had put out a new album, and I hadn't even been following them close enough to know that they'd put one out, and yet Rush was coming into town, and so it's like, yeah, I got to go. Yeah, you just, because you go. Because it's Rush. And so they were just kind of never forgotten for a lot of people. And I'm not one of those that ever saw them, 50, 60 times, because I know we have a lot of people on this channel that are those people. But I was a fan enough. I saw them a bunch of times, and I would even see them, like I said, when I didn't even know they'd put something new out, but I'd say, oh, Rush is coming, let's go. I mean, it just, because you just never forgot them because they were just so awesome. You just knew that whatever they were going to put out, it was going to be quality, it was going to be solid, they were going to put on a good show, they were going to play well, they were going to be respectful, the whole thing. It was going to be a really excellent thing. And then I took my son on their final tour, which none of us knew was their final tour, but I guess it was kind of anticipated by a lot of people. And it was just, again, even if you didn't know the music, it's just such a classy, excellent show. That it was just great, clear up until the end. They were just awesome. So, okay, Nugent attacks New York City. There you go, new album, Penetrator. Penetrators, I think I have a couple of copies of that album. I ended up really, really liking that tune. And it was the first time that most of us ever heard, is his name Brian Howe? Oh, I'm going to feel so stupid if I have that wrong. Because Ted Nugent had other singers on his albums, and he picked up this guy, Brian Howe, who sang on, I think, the entire first side of Penetrator, and then Ted sang on the second side. But Brian Howe then went on after being with Ted Nugent, and then sang for kind of the resurrected version of Bad Company. And then that's where people really, really became familiar with them. I think he was didn't really get noticed so much, because at this point in Ted Nugent's career, even though there was some great stuff on that album, he just wasn't on top at that point, right? So anyway, that's cool. I have that album, and I remember seeing it in the store, and I thought, is that new? And then I bought it, and I was like, this is actually kind of, it's got some really classic kind of Ted Nugent stuff, and some really cool tunes on there. The song that if you've never listened to the album Penetrator, and you're familiar with Brian Howe, go look up the song Tied Up in Love. It's on Ted Nugent Penetrator, and Brian Howe sings it. And if you listen to it, you're familiar with kind of Mark II of Bad Company, where he sang, you'll totally recognize his voice when you hear it. It's good, and it's a good tune. Okay, Accept joins the Ozzy show, Balls to the Wall. Great, that was a great song. Had some cool tunes on that album too. Motley Crue head north of the border. This is still Shout at the Devil time period for them. And then what do we have here? Back issues of Circus Magazine. Order all your back issues here. Look at this. Did any of you ever do this? Where you went through and looked at all the things you'd missed and just go buy back issues of Circus Magazine. And then, of course, none of this online stuff. Fill it out. Stick it in an envelope. Does it say here? Yes, I want the back issues indicated below at $4 each. Or solid gold double platinum at $7.95. That's great. Okay, here's more Scorpions. Bad Boys Running Wild. Bad Boys Running Wild. Yeah, so, yeah, and there was always, what was the song that Klaus Meine always came out? I can't believe I can't think of the song. He'd always bring out a guitar and play in a song. So there's Klaus again. Again, it's that same outfit. Every time you see him, he had that shirt, whatever that was. And then there's Francis Buchholz, Schenker, Matthias Japs, and then that's got to be Klaus Meine in the back. Yeah. I loved the Scorpions. Oh my gosh. The album Blackout, which is the one right before this one, that's the tour I saw them on. Although when I saw them, it was not long before before Love at First Sting came out. But man, Blackout was a great album, just start to finish. Everything on that album, every single song on that album was great. I thought I absolutely loved all of it. So there they are again. Okay, we have SITs and stay in tune. Once you do a gig and go into the studio with SITs and stay in tune, that must be what it stands for, you'll never be the same. I never tried this ever. Oh, Steve Lukather. Steve Lukather. Oh my gosh. If you ever watch this stuff with me and Gary, we kind of have had this running joke about how he's just everywhere you turn around, all of a sudden it's like Steve Lukather's everywhere, that there's some sort of rule that he has to be involved in a certain number of projects every year. Anyway, it's just kind of funny. So there he is again, Steve Lukather promoting Stay in Tune strings. Wow. That is crazy. Okay, did you ever use SITs? SITs strings. That's so funny. That's actually really funny. Okay. Choose your career books. $5.95 each. Wait a minute. Acting, a pro's advice on how to succeed at auditions, where to find jobs and agents and how they operate. Advertising. I have a bachelor's degree in advertising. I could have just bought a book for $5.95. A comprehensive guide to the scope and significance of the industry in today's employment, architecture, automotive services, beauty, culture, broadcasting. Look at this. So you could buy a book to teach you how to do that career, I guess. Career Books, Division of National Textbook Company. How many you want? The code, which I'm guessing is that thing right there, at $5.95. Wow. Sales tax, Illinois and California only. And then look at this, you put all your stuff down here. MasterCard. That is so interesting. Choose your career. Okay, I got to know. I've gone through a million of these magazines, and there's a lot of advertisements you see over and over. I don't think I've ever seen this one. And maybe I've just haven't paid attention, but did any of you ever do Choose Your Career? I bet you now, every time we go through these magazines, I'm going to start seeing it now that I said that. But that's really interesting. Choose Your Career. Okay, this is the HSAS time period, Through the Fire. I think, didn't we talk about them at the very beginning of this magazine? It's been like a week since we filmed the last one, but yeah, right there. Okay, maybe that was just kind of getting us ready for this amazing article they were going to talk about. So HSAS, Sammy Hagar, and Neal Schon, obviously, and let's see here. So these are the four guys down here: Kenny Aronson, Michael Shreve, Sammy Hagar, and Neal Schon. And this was just kind of a super group, and they just put out that one album. And there's a lot of people that just loved that album. Of course, it had Top of the Rock, standing on top of the rock. And that, I got to admit, that was a great song. Had a cool guitar hook at the beginning. Maybe it's more of a riff. I don't know what's the difference necessarily, but it was pretty awesome. And then they also did a version of Procol Harum's Whiter Shade of Pale. I think that was the first song on the second side. And I actually had never heard that song before until this album came out. And I listened to it and I thought, whoa. And then you look at it and you see that they didn't write it. And then you kind of you find out that it's this old band from way, way back in the old days. At least that's the way it seemed, to us at the time, even though it was only 14 years earlier. I don't know when Procol Harum put it out, but it wasn't, in the grand scheme of things, it was maybe a decade and a half earlier. But to us, that was like, it may as well have been 500 years ago. I remember seeing this ad so many times, and the only reason I saw it was not because of the girl, it was because of the guitar, believe it or not. And the reason is because I have an Aria Pro 2, and that's it right there. I've had that since I was a kid. My dad bought it for me, and it to this day is my favorite guitar that I own. So, but you didn't see him very often. And so every time I'd see Aria Pro 2 somewhere, I'd be like, oh, I'd get all excited because I didn't know anything about it. I just knew that I had one and just loved that guitar. So whenever I'd see one, I would just go, yeah, that's cool. That's so awesome. It kind of gave some credibility to my guitar, where I felt a little bit lonely because everybody else had, Fenders and Gibsons and all the other stuff. And then I'm with my Aria, which in the end was, whether we planned it or not, ended up being one of the coolest guitars, if not the coolest guitar I've ever owned. And it's because it sounds good, it plays good. It's just unique looking. And so anyway, so I'd see that ad all the time. Oh my gosh, Kiss. Their pictures were on the front, weren't they? So we should have expected this. Was there? I don't see a picture of Kiss. No, they didn't warn us that there was going to be Kiss, although they probably had it in the... There it is right there. Okay. So Kiss, this was the Lick It Up tour, and they were, they just looked at this point... It was kind of... Even though they were carrying on, and I got to be honest, I loved Lick It Up. I thought it was a really excellent album. I still do. I still really like a lot of the stuff on that album. I think, the first song, was it Exciter? And it's a good tune. And when you hear that and that opens up that album, you think this is pretty good. Because I'd kind of moved away, kind of kept them in my peripheral vision after Dynasty. I loved Dynasty, but I was a kid. And then I don't know what it was, but once Unmasked came out, I just kind of felt myself just kind of drifting away. Then of course, Music from the Elder, and then Creatures of the Night. And I just stopped. I knew that they were putting stuff out, but I really wasn't. I think I might have bought Creatures of the Night, but I wasn't really paying attention. And then Lick It Up came out, took the makeup off. I bought the album, and all of a sudden I thought, whoa. It didn't sound like old Kiss, but it was good. It was just good songwriting, and it sounded cool. And anyway, and of course, because they had Vinnie Vincent, and we did a show on Vinnie Vincent. It's one of our favorite things to talk about here. It's just Vinnie Vincent, because it's so weird talking about him. But he was, there's arguments as to how much impact he had on that album, but no doubt about it, he was there when they had that kind of resurrection of Kiss. But what was interesting is that when this came out, it was just, when you look back and think 10 years before this, they were the biggest thing in the world. And in many ways, they were setting trends. Even though they were kind of building on other people's things, they were really setting the trend for a lot of people and what was to come after them. But here they are 10 years later, and you look at this, and they could be interchanged with Mark Storace from, where was that? From Crocus. Because they had just started, where did that go? We had that picture here a second ago, because these bands kind of became, oh my goodness, there it is. I mean, this guy right there, look at that. There's Paul Stanley. What's the difference between those two? And my point is, where they had been the trendsetters, they found themselves here we are in 1984, thinking, how do we stay relevant? Well, they started becoming followers of trends. Luckily for them, they could still write some decent tunes, and they had the legacy behind them, so they were able to kind of keep going. Anyway. Okay, rock buttons. Here you go. You can get your Prince, Culture Club, Men at Work, Styx, Adamant, Black Sabbath, AC/DC. Okay, so anyway, you can please send $1 for our full color catalog to Button Up Company. There you go. Send that in. Throw that in an envelope. Get your catalog so you can buy buttons from whatever, what'd they call it? Button Up Company. Rock Licks and Leads featuring Jeff Key. I don't know who Jeff Key is. If you know who Jeff Key is, or if I should know and I should feel stupid right now, please tell me. But Jeff Key, video rock guitar course, 2-hour cassette covers, complete foundation of rock leader. So this is rock, but it's a video, but cassette must be video cassette. Yes, deliver my cassette within 3 weeks. I haven't closed my check or money order of $59 to R&R Enterprises. Interesting. Here's t-shirts and posters. Okay, who do we have here? Iron Maiden, Iron Maiden, Iron Maiden, Iron Maiden. More Iron Maiden. Oh my gosh, that whole column. There's some Motley Crue. Look at all this stuff. There's Van Halen, Quiet Riot, Ozzy. And there's Rat, Blue Oyster Cult, Rainbow. Bent Out of Shape right there. How interesting. There's Judas Priest. This is so interesting to see so much. Oh, look at that. They even have them in columns. Iron Maiden, all these different. Because there's something about, the Eddie character, the Iron Maiden t-shirts. I mean, they were just everywhere. Who didn't have a Number of the Beast t-shirt? I did. And those t-shirts were just so cool. All the Iron Maiden artwork was so cool. It was everywhere. So anyway, it seems like everybody had Iron Maiden t-shirts. But here, you can get your free catalog. And then has all the price key for all the different types of interesting. Why not go for it all? Underlined all. So this is expanded 250 riffs, not just anything from their solos, but stylistics and signature riffs that you can use. Increase your vocabulary of chops with the sounds of the greats. So anyway, this is a tape with 2 90-minute cassettes jammed full, plus a book of 100 pages from the Sound Connection, New Jersey. And look at this. Look at that. That amazing drawing. That's so funny. Wow. Japanese rock magazines in rock, Music Life. You've heard how great they are. Why not see for yourself? Never saw one of these magazines before. Maybe we should look for some because that'd be fun to go through on this channel. There's Paul Stanley again. Now, this is interesting. How to handle peer pressure. This is R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Company. If some of your friends smoke and they make you feel like you should smoke too, that's peer pressure. But even though we're a cigarette company, we think young people shouldn't smoke. Even the decision to smoke and not smoke should be. That is so interesting. Boy, have things changed. That is really interesting to see this in this magazine. How to handle peer pressure. R.J. Reynolds. Interesting stuff. Okay, Graffiti, NYC. What are they selling here? Like some sort of sleeveless t-shirts? Because that's what these look like right here. These t-shirts with the Union Jack were so big when Def Leppard started wearing them. I had one. I think everybody started getting those things. So these are, okay, yeah, these are just a little order form to buy. You can even get your studded leather belt for, what is it? $12, and the wristband is $6. Here's all the movies. Greystoke, My Best Friend's Girl, Mike's More. I don't know anything about those. I don't know any of those movies. Okay, subscribe today. Subscribe to today's hottest rock magazine. Order now and save almost $5 off the newsstand price. This fabulous offer, please enter. Gift, my own new renewal subscription. I have enclosed blank for blank. Mail to Circus Magazine. This is on Park Avenue South, New York. And then order subscriptions for you. And we've seen this in another one before, where you can order a bunch of subscriptions for lots of people. How interesting. Okay, cool. Oh, man. Okay, there's Kevin DuBrow. Of course, there's Geddy Lee. There's Neil Peart. But there is Simon Le Bon. So this was Seven and the Ragged Tiger time period. And I have to admit, they had some really, really cool stuff. And I don't know what it was. When I first saw the video for Hungry Like the Wolf, it was where so many videos at the time were like hyper cheesy. They'd kind of been that way for a few years. When they put that together for Hungry Like the Wolf, it felt, I don't know, it was more cinematic somehow. And it was a cool song. I didn't want to like it because I was into all the other heavy metal stuff, but it was a good tune. And then when this album came out, when Seven and the Ragged Tiger came out, it had a few hits on it. It had Union of the Snake was a pretty cool tune. It had New Moon on Monday, and then it had the song, remember that? New Moon on Monday. Yeah, it was a cool tune. And then it had the song The Reflex, but not Not the song Reflex. It was the Reflex. The Reflex is a lonely child. Anyway, I don't know. I always kind of dug them. I thought they were cool. I actually have some of their stuff. The Final Frontier concept custom length electric guitar strings. Concept 1, Concept 2. Oh, fit your guitar perfectly. I see what they've done here. I've never... I must be really clueless. D'Angelico. Okay, I must be really clueless. Because what this is when you have the tuning pegs on both sides, and then you have the tuning pegs that go along, and then you have the different lengths needed. Like in one set, you need your high E string to be really, really long, and on the other set, you need your high E string to actually be short or shorter. So tell me, we have a lot of guitar players that watch. Maybe they even still make that stuff and I just don't know it. I've never noticed so, because whenever I bought guitar strings, it was always like, give me whatever, and then they just hand it to me. I never even thought about it. That's really interesting. I feel kind of silly that I'd never... It's so obvious. Huh, interesting. Okay. All right, Paul Stanley goes to bat with rock writers. We have another picture of Paul Stanley here. Okay, Ozzy to become a father again. Way back in 1974, when Ozzy Osbourne was riding high on success with Black Sabbath, he predicted that his career in rock and roll wasn't going to last forever. Quote, eventually my lollipop is going to melt, he assessed, and his fans will all go on to someone else. I'm simply a product, a tin of beans. Anyway, so he's following the birth of his daughter, Amy, last year. Ozzy's wife, Sharon, is now expecting their second child in October. Oh, interesting. Okay. But it wasn't going to last forever. Well, he sure tried. I mean, it's amazing. It is amazing how this guy, it fascinates me how this guy in 1979 was an alcoholic, drug addicted, washed up rock star who could have easily kind of just disappeared. And 50 years later, we'd have been going, you remember that guy? But instead, everybody on the planet knows who he is. How? It's amazing that happened. It's so fascinating because you go ask, like I've given this example before, you go ask my mom about anybody in this magazine or any rock star or anything prior to when she was into Elvis and that stuff. She wouldn't know anything, but she'd know the name Ozzy Osbourne. She wouldn't be able to tell you anything about him, but she'd know his name. And it's just amazing that somehow this guy predicting it wasn't going to last for, and here he ended up being the one guy that, anyway, it just fascinates me. And it baffles me too, how that happened the way that it did. And I actually like him too. I mean, I own so much of his stuff and I've seen him in concerts but anyway, it's just interesting. Okay. What is this? Zildjian Basics. You can buy jackets, duffel bags, shirts. You can be a walking billboard for Zildjian, which people still do. We all do that. And it's cool. They always had that cool logo and we'd see those, drummers would be wearing those things around all the time. And Zildjian made good stuff for sure. So, okay, so moving on here. There's Angus Young. Music videos you've been waiting for. Pink Floyd. Picture music, compilation of 14 great TV shows. And Jimmy Plays Berkeley, Jimi Hendrix's finest performance ever. Huh. The making of Thriller. Okay. Wow, you can order those, all those right there. That's an interesting advertisement. There's just 4 things. VHS, Beta, Laser, and CED? Okay, help me out here. What am I, CED? Somebody's going to say it and I'm going to go, oh yeah, obviously. I don't know. That's a video format. What other video formats were going around back then? CED. I don't know. That one has me baffled a little bit. I mean, U-matic, was around back then. I don't know. Help me. If anybody knows what that would be, that has me a little baffled. I feel silly. Okay, Cars. So this is, okay, Heartbeat City period. The Cars they actually had some really, really cool stuff over the years. Rico Kasich, and Benjamin Orr. He had a really cool voice. He was a bass player. He actually went on and had a little bit of a solo career. But Heartbeat City was uh-oh, it's magic when I'm with you. Remember that song? And then You Might Think I'm Delirious. But the other one that came off that album was the song Drive. And that was a huge hit. Who's going to drive you home tonight? So speaking of Benjamin Orr, he's the one that sang that song. That was actually a really, really cool tune. So this is Slade. Crocus again, right there. When you need power, you need boomers. Boomer guitar strings. A lot of people use those. Everything, there we go. Everything Duran Duran. Check this out. They were a force to be reckoned with. They were huge. They were so big. They had so many hit tunes, and a lot of them were good. And then they resurrected themselves in the early 90s sometime. And I bought that album. I can't even think what it was called. But it had Ordinary World on it. And anyway, it had 2 really good songs on it. The rest of it was meh. But they were, I don't know, they had some good stuff. Let's see here. Jack Stan, Play It Safe. Oh, check that out. Okay, so this would plug. So if you had 2 inputs for your guitar, you could use one of them as a guitar stand. You know why I would never do that? Can you imagine you have that thing in there, your guitar's leaned up against it, and somebody bumps your guitar, and that thing, your input could be destroyed so easily doing something like that. But that's interesting. Play It Safe. Easy, carry along, non-conductive, fits all guitars, universal. Extra feature. Oh, and there's a pick holder. Click, put your pick right in the top of it. That is hilariously awesome. What does that say there? Oh, this is it. They were at NAMM in booth 915. Does Jack Stan still make this thing? I don't know. That's kind of interesting. Sonic Resemblance, Radiant Amplification. I don't know anything about radiant amplification. What are they talking about here? Is this believes that the amount of money you have to spend shouldn't determine the features you can afford. That's why our amps. Okay, yeah, radiant amps. I don't know anything about radiant amps, but they have 2 channels. 2 channels. So if you buy your jack stand right there, you can use it there. Oh, but one of them, but one's over on top of the other one. So I don't know if that would work so well if they're not side by side. Oh well. Okay. Beyer microphones. I believe I used to have one of these right here. It was okay. They actually had some decent stuff, as I recall. I just remember this one was okay. But I think I've had I've worked with Beyer studio mics before. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I don't know a lot about Beyer. Music gear. Stars Instruments, Nikki 6. Look at that. Yeah, this is a shout out to Devil Time period. Man, those clothes that they had during that period, those are so interesting. So here we go. PV bass. Look, Kyle Henderson, the producers, they were kind of a pop band. What was that song? There's right there. Sheila. I don't think I would know it if I heard it again, but they were just a kind of a top 40-ish poppy band back then. I know very, very little about them other than they existed. But Kyle Henderson apparently plays PV basses. I've never owned a PV bass. I had a friend that had a PV guitar, and it was actually shockingly a decent guitar. And I bought a purple PV guitar for one of my kids once, and I loved playing it. It actually was kind of a fun guitar. So whatever. They had their hands in everything. Let's see here. So Jonathan Moffat. So he's on tour with the Jacksons. We talked about them earlier. There's his setup right there. In case you're wondering, that's his live setup. Okay, now we're getting to play lead guitar like a star. Star licks. We've seen this in different variations of the different places in the magazine before. I remember seeing this though all the time. Also available star guitar instructional tapes. Randy Rhoads style, Jimmy Page style, Alex Lifeson style, Black Sabbath style, Scorpion style. Very cool. Then we have all this fun stuff here. D'Angelico. Yeah, here's the concept strings that we talked about, 1 and 2. Electro voice microphone. Gibson guitar. The Sonics 180 Deluxe. MXR effects pedal. Seymour Duncan pickups. And then what is this down here? Hard Rock and Steel. The new rock string. No gimmicks, no computers, no bull. Just pure power. Electric guitar and bass. And what do we have here? This is just like a live mixer. Excellent mixing console for home use with its built-in power amp and equalization system. Building a basic 8-track studio, the mixing board. Oh, okay, so this is instructions on how somebody would put together a home studio. The price of a good 8-track option open reel machine ranges from inexpensive Fostex of $2,500 to an expensive Otari 21. Yeah, for an 8-track. Boy, that's so interesting. Huh. Okay. Washburn. Free color catalog. No, wait, not free. For a color catalog, $2. Washburn Tour Series. Obviously, he's got the leather jacket and the cool rock star pose. Washburn, nothing like it. Interesting. Okay. Test reports piloting the Memory Moog Plus. It's a new age for synthesizers. Yeah, you're telling me, 1984. Boy, it's just so interesting watching how that developed and how quickly things changed in that world. So fascinating. So here's a whole thing. And they gave it an above standard grade for this. Anyway, so many companies back in there. And then I don't know when it happened, but when MIDI became a thing, and I don't know that it's really even, the whole MIDI idea has changed much in 500 years or whenever it started being developed. But I mean, just then from being able to sequence things and then assign channels. I mean, it was just so revolutionary when all that stuff was happening. So at last, no slipping, no typing, no pricking guitar strings. Gibson grabbers. Again, I know nothing about this, but if it says there's no slipping, no tying, no clipping, no pricking, that sounds actually really nice. I can't tell you how many times I've drawn blood in a finger from the dink, one of those tips of those things just jamming into your finger. I don't know what this Gibson grabbers. Okay, I have something I'm going to look up after this. I feel so silly. We've done a couple of these different guitar strings thing. I've been playing guitar since I was a child, and I've noticed 2 different things about guitar strings in this magazine that I can't even speak intelligently about. It looks like it has a little tip on it or something. Interesting. Gibson grabbers. If you know about it, tell me. Help me feel dumber, or maybe not so dumb. Maybe it didn't last and I just missed the whole thing. Okay, be a metalhead. This looks like just some sort of, okay, this is a shirt. White sleeveless t-shirts. I guess we put that on it? I don't know. Look at all these, just all these different classified ads. Get it all now, Musicade. Hard rockers, satin pants, free albums, free rock photo. What is a free rock photo? T-shirts, wall hangings, rock tapestries. I don't know. Concert photos. So we have birthday wishes here. Happy birthday, Ann Wilson, the heart of rock and roll. And then it has who it's from and their address. Steve Clark, happy 24th. You're the greatest. Love always, Tina. And it has her, oh my gosh, all the like people. It's so funny that we used to do this. Pen Pals for Def Leppard, Kiss, Motley Crue, Triumph, Kiss again, Metallica, Police. How interesting. And personals. I love you, Jeannie. You're the best. Gordon. I hope Jeannie got it. And if she didn't, and she happens to be watching this, Jeannie, you just need to know that Gordon thinks you're the best. So, all right, here we go. So, tattoo kit. Wait, okay. Bumper sticker printing device. Cheap, simple, portable. And it says tattoo kit right next to it. No talent needed. That's great. I definitely want to get a tattoo from somebody. I have a kit. I don't have they said I didn't need talent. Okay, photo ID card. So now we have all the fake IDs. You can get your Circus Magazine t-shirt right here. Illustrated displays. And then the audio shelf. I'm guessing this is the stack records. Record sleeves. I used to buy those plastic record sleeves. There was like one place in town when I was a little kid that you could get them, and we would go. Anyway, I have them all over my records these days, but that was just such an interesting thing, buying these record sleeves. Plastic record sleeves, yeah, that's what it is. Last chance ever. Official 1981 limited edition Rolling Stones tour poster. Get it now. Okay, then we have back pages. This Lou O'Neill Jr. guy, he always had the round. Somebody cut his for the magazine, cut his head out in that perfect circle. And then who do we have? Van Halen jumps to new height. Cougars, and this is. Yeah, so this is. They jumps to new heights is an understatement. That album 1984 was just enormous, huge. So there's Eddie and Alex, there's David, and then of course you always had one of these three. There was always three pictures, and one of the three would have Lou O'Neill Jr., that guy apparently, in it, and then with John Mellon, Cougar Camp. Okay, and then let's see here. We have the Gibson Designer Series. Now you can order a unique custom designed finish on your new Gibson Explorer or Flying V for that special look on stage to go with your special sound. How interesting. So we have like flags, kind of stripes, Eddie Van Halen reminiscent of that. What is this? Squiggles and paint splashes. And then whatever that is. Huh. How interesting. You could just, they took out this full page advertisement for that. Did anybody in here watching this video did you ever express yourself with a custom Gibson from the Designer Series? That'd be really interesting to hear if you did, because that would be actually kind of cool. So, and we come to the end of the back page, and what do we have? We have Rush, a full page ad for Grace Under Pressure. I remember seeing this cover. I always thought this was kind of interesting. It was kind of a cool album cover. And as we talked about earlier, Distant Early Warning, I actually really dug that tune. So it wasn't my favorite Rush album, but whatever. You know, Rush was Rush, as they say. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. Please leave your comments. There were so many things we talked about in here. If you remember any of those things, or if you can answer any of those questions that I had where I wasn't sure what was going on there, I would love to get the answers to those things, and leave your comments below. Give us your thoughts on what we talked about. Do you remember any of this stuff? And also, what's interesting is, did you have this particular this issue? It's been fascinating as we started doing these just off and on a couple of months ago, how often people say, yep, had that one, remember all those pictures, remember all that stuff. Because for so many of us, this was kind of our lifeline into this world. Because, you know, it's hard for us, obviously, to remember the world before we had all information in front of us all the time at our fingertips. Yet back then, these were those, you know, every few weeks or a new magazine of some sort had come out, and you'd be so excited for that, to see some new pictures and read something new and find out what was going on. And this is where we would get that information. And so it's kind of cool now, this is something that so many of us, wherever we happen to be living at the time, we were looking at these same things, and they kind of played a big role in our younger lives. And so it's kind of cool now looking back at this and then kind of seeing not only how they shaped us, but how their music shaped our social lives. They helped us gain appreciation. And we've talked about this so many times, our appreciations of art and our appreciation for community. Because one of the things that we used to do so often, these are the things you could all relate to, because all your friends would know who all these bands were, and you'd be able to talk about them and share information and look at each other's records and listen to them together. And it was just music was such a communal thing back then. And it's not what it was, obviously. And we got to live through this, which was such a cool thing at the time. And to be able to kind of look back at this and talk about it now is kind of fun. So anyway, hope you enjoyed that. Please leave your comments, like the video, follow the channel. If you're not already following the channel, please. And also, if you enjoyed this, chances are you know several people that would enjoy this too. So just do us a favor and hit that share button, send it off to your friends, put it on your Facebook feed, Twitter, what have you, and just let people know so they can see what we're doing over here. And then we'll just kind of, this fraternity that we're developing here will just continue to grow. And with that, have yourself a fantastic day.